So this morning we loaded up and we rode out into the desert, headed into the Carlsbad Caverns. And it is definitely in the desert. It was beautiful terrain, beautiful country. You can see that it is still kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It was a good drive to get there. And you check in and you can either hike down or you can take the elevator down. And the hike is about an hour, hour and a half to go down. And we had some friends suggest just take the elevator and spend the time in the caverns, and that's what we did. So we took the elevator 800 feet below the surface to get down to the caverns. And it took almost 1 minute of travel time in the elevator to get there. And as you can imagine, that's a pretty wild experience in itself. And so the caverns are located almost the height of the Empire State Building down there. We took a special tour and went with the ranger down into a special part of the caverns and just had a good time enjoying that part of the caverns. Part of that tour included them flipping out the lights, which was crazy. This part was pretty humorous. Over 100 years ago, somebody graffitied the wall, and due to the Antiquities Act, they actually have to protect that graffiti and they can't change it. But it was beautiful down there. It makes any caverns that you've seen in the East Coast look super small. This thing was huge. And we had just a good time checking all that out and looking at everything that was there. So one of my favorite quotes was by a guy that was sent to survey this for the National Park Service in the 20s. And he said, "I enter upon this task of compiling this report with a feeling of timidity, as I am wholly conscious of the feebleness of my efforts to convey in words the deep conflicting emotions, the feeling of fear and awe, and a desire for an inspired understanding of the divine Creator's work, which presents to the human eye such a complex aggregate of natural wonders in such a space." And I can totally relate with everything that he just said there. It is awe-inspiring, and it's also kind of a sense of fear that you have when you're that far under the ground and you look at how big and massive everything is down there. And of course, it is all beautiful when you stop and imagine the early explorers. Jim White is the guy who's kind of credited with doing the major exploration. And he did most of that in the early 1900s with just a small little like oil type lantern or kerosene type lantern. You know, they didn't have near the lighting that we had. And it's just impressive to think they did all of that exploring. The pool was beautiful. It was actually 8 foot deep. And it was just an amazing place. After we did the special tour, we went on the big room tour. And it is massive. The hike itself was 1.5 miles or 2 miles, I think, through the whole big room. And the height of the big room at its highest point is 250 feet up. You can fit 6 football fields inside the big room of the cavern. And there are over 36 miles of caverns in Carlsbad Caverns. And we hiked 2 to 3 of those today. So it is just crazy. Everywhere you look, there's something pretty to see. This was wild. That ladder goes down 90 feet. They used that back in about 100 years ago to go down and explore a lower cave. And I can't imagine going down that little rickety ladder and checking it out. And then it was fun to watch. You can actually take tours and go caving or splunking. And so there was a tour group coming out, and you can see way down in there is somebody's flashlight as they're working up ladders and ropes to come climbing up out of the lower cavern. And even in the tour guide information, it says, you know, prepare to get wet and muddy because you're going through tight spaces. So we had a great time in Carlsbad, and then we got on the road back out in the desert and eventually made it on into Texas. And we eventually made it to almost the middle part of Texas, and still beautiful country. And in just a minute, one of my favorite parts of the drives coming up, this is all farmland field. You can see just tilled up forever. And then in this, you can see as we drive into the windmills, and it was almost kind of mesmerizing checking out all these windmills as you're moving forward. and they are everywhere and they are huge. So another great day for us.